The judge looked at me, his eyes devoid of emotion. "We're ready to issue a ruling." That sentence felt like it collapsed my entire world. It was as if the ground beneath me gave way. My chest grew so heavy I couldn't breathe. I gripped the edge of the table, my nails digging into the hard wood, clinging to anything that might keep me from falling apart right there. I had prepared myself for the worst. I thought, this is the moment I lose my only child. I stood alone, facing Margaret, me mother-in-law, a cold, powerful woman who had relentlessly pushed me to the brink throughout the trial. She claimed I was unfit to be a mother. She said I was weak, unstable, and alone. And she wasn't wrong, I was alone. I had no blood relatives to stand with me. Aaron, my husband, the only person who had ever truly been on my side, was gone. And just when I was on the verge of collapse, a small voice broke the silence, like a gentle breeze brushing across an open wound. "Your Honor, I want to read this." I turned around sharply. It was Theo's 6-year-old son standing up from the gallery. He walked slowly to the center of the courtroom, clutching a crumpled piece of paper, probably something he had hidden in his backpack that morning. The courtroom fell into absolute silence, as if all sound had been vacuumed from the space. He stood in the middle of that vast courtroom, his oversized navy sweater nearly reaching his knees, his little sneakers picked out himself the day before still dirty from yesterday's play. So small, so fragile, yet his eyes were unnervingly calm. His hands trembled, but his voice was clear. "My name is Theo. I want to talk about my mom." I held my breath. I couldn't move. My heart felt like it had stopped in that moment of stillness. He began to read, word by word, slowly, as if each sentence was a heartbeat trying to express everything he had never said aloud. "My mom's name is Jessica. She's 33. She works from home, drawing and making pictures on the computer. She's the one who makes me breakfast every day. She hugs me when I cry. She's often tired, but she always wakes up early to pack me lunch with dinosaur shapes." His voice faltered when he spoke about his Dadarnth man. He only knew through pictures and bedtime stories I had told him. "My dad is gone, but mom never left me. She says even when she's tired, she's still my superhero." I covered my mouth, tears flowing uncontrollably. I had thought I'd hidden my emotions well from him. But maybe he saw it all. The way I forced myself out of bed each morning, the way I silently cried over dishes, the way I whispered apologies when I thought he was asleep. And then he ended the letter with a sentence that left everyone in the room speechless. "If I can't live with my mom, I'll be sad forever. I don't need a big house. I just need her." No one smiled. No one said a word. Even Margot, the woman who had shouted in court that I was a danger to her grandson, couldn't speak now. The judge looked at Theo for a long while. His gaze no longer stern. He lowered his head, drew in a deep breath, and turned to face me. There was nothing more to say. All the evidence, all the reports, all the arguments suddenly felt meaningless. A letter from a 6-year-old child was enough to change everything. She always thought I wasn't the right kind. Not raised properly. Not from a respectable enough family. Once, right in front of me, she told Aaron, "That girl has a good heart, but she should know her place." Aaron would just smile and brush it off, telling me not to mind her, that his mother would come around. She never did. After Aaron passed away, Margot slipped into our lives with a quiet, calculated persistence. At first, I truly believed she was grieving too, that maybe she just needed to stay close to Theo, her only connection to her son. I let her in. I invited her to Theo's birthdays, to school plays, to casual dinners at our little house. But the criticism never stopped. "He stays up too late. Children need structure. He's too soft because you coddle him." She would sneer when I sang Theo lullabies or when I let him pick his mismatched outfits for school. The things I believed were acts of love, she treated them as proof that I was failing as a mother. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and saw her handing Theo a glossy brochure for a private boarding school. I had never even heard of it. When I gently said that wasn't something we could afford right now, she didn't hesitate. She stirred her tea and replied, "Some environments are simply better for children. Not every mother understands that." I said nothing. But from that moment I started drawing boundaries. Shorter visits. Clearer rules. Less interference. And that's when things turned cold. The civility vanished. In its place came scrutiny, intense and constant. She questioned my job, my income, my parenting choices. Then one day, after Theo had spent the weekend at her house, he sat beside me, eyes innocent, voice quiet. "Mommy, do you think I'd be happier living with Grandma?" It was like being stabbed straight through the chest. In that instant I knew. This wasn't about love or support. It was about control. Margot didn't just think I was doing it wrong. She wanted to take over. And she saw an opening. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox. I didn't even have to open it to know. Somehow I could feel what it meant. But I opened it anyway, me hands trembling, and there it was in bold print. Petition for legal custody. Not shared custody. Not supervised visits. Full sole custody. I sank to the kitchen floor, the letter crumpling in my grip. My hands had gone numb. My vision blurred, not because of the small print but because my world was collapsing. In the living room, Theo was still laughing at his cartoons, blissfully unaware that his entire life was being pulled into a battle he never should have had to witness. She demanded full custody. In the petition, Margot claimed I was emotionally unstable, financially insecure, and incapable of providing Theo with a stable environment. There were long paragraphs where she portrayed me as a grieving widow too broken to properly dress my child, let alone raise him. The cruelest part? She wasn't entirely wrong. Yes, I was grieving. There were nights I cried in the shower, mornings I couldn't fold the laundry. There were days when dinner was just toast because I didn't have the strength to cook. But not once did I ever disappear from my son's life. I showed up. Every single day. I made him meals. I sat with him over his alphabet books. I held him when he had nightmares, whispered in his ear that mommy's here. I wasn't perfect, but I was his safe place. And now someone was trying to tell the world that it wasn't enough. I called Lynn me sister, the only family I had left. She drove over in under an hour. She read through the papers twice before she looked up at me, her voice steady but fierce. "She's playing dirty, Jess. But you can't let her win." I hired a court-appointed attorney because that's all I could afford. He was kind, sympathetic, but clearly exhausted. His advice was simple. Stay calm. Be respectful. Document everything. I didn't feel confident. Especially not when Margot had secured one of the most well-known family lawyers in the county, the kind of attorney who thrived in tense, high-profile custody battles. I started a journal. Every phone call, every visit, every unsettling comment from Margot, I wrote it all down. I dug up Theo's kindergarten reports, pediatric records, teacher emails, birthday photos, hand-drawn pictures, anything that could prove he was healthy, happy, and safe. Every night after Theo was asleep, I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by printed emails and paper folders, while old TV reruns hummed in the background, just to stop the silence from swallowing me whole. And then came court. The first hearing was just procedural, but it shook me to my core. Margot sat upright, dressed in a sharp navy suit, the image of composure and control. She smiled at Theo as he entered, but her gaze locked on me like a predator sizing up the wounded. Her attorney was smooth, articulate, and knew exactly how to twist every small imperfection into a character flaw. "She has no consistent income," he said. "She works from home irregularly. She has no nearby support system. She suffers from anxiety and is still clearly mourning her late husband. We believe that, while well-intentioned, Ms. Carter is not emotionally equipped to meet Theodore's long-term needs." I clenched my fists, bit my lip until it bled, not from rage but fear. The fear that people would believe him. That my very real, very human imperfections would eclipse everything good I had done for my son. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and shout that none of those things, my instability, my exhaustion, my grief, meant I was a bad mother. But I didn't. I stayed still, just like my lawyer told me. Calm. Respectful. Patient. Back home, I tried to keep everything as normal as possible. But children sense things. They always do. One night, after brushing his teeth, Theo asked me in a small voice, "Am I going to have 2 homes now?" I froze. I didn't know what to say. So I lied. "No, baby. Mommy's just working through some grown-up stuff. Everything's going to be okay." But deep down I wasn't sure. Then Margot started pulling more tricks. She called Child Protective Services an anonymous tip. Someone, probably her, claimed I left Theo alone during the day. A caseworker showed up unannounced, right in the middle of a Zoom call with a client. Theo was sitting at the kitchen table in his pajamas building Lego. I answered all her questions, showed her the house, even offered to provide references from Theo's teachers and pediatrician. She left politely, but her presence lingered like smoke in the air. That night I locked the door, sat on the floor by the laundry basket and cried. Later that week, Theo drew me a picture. It was a stick figure version of the two of us holding hands standing in front of our house. A speech bubble floated above my cartoon head. I love you more than everything. I hung it on the fridge and stared at it for a long time. I didn't know how this was going to end, but I knew one thing deep down with every part of my being. I wasn't giving up. Not on my son. Not without a fight. The night before the final custody hearing, I hardly slept. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold tea, papers spread out around me like armor mails from Theo's teacher praising his progress, notes from his pediatrician about his healthy development, drawings he'd made at school. I even printed out the flyer from the local library's Mommy and Me reading hour that we went to every Tuesday. I needed to prove that Theo wasn't just surviving with me. He was thriving. Still, doubt crept in through the cracks. What if the judge saw me the way Margot did? What if they thought grief made me weak? What if being emotional, being gentle, being honest somehow meant I wasn't fit to be a mom? Lena came over to help me prep. She brought snacks I didn't eat and a folder of old photos she thought I could use. Theo's 3rd birthday, his first day of preschool. A selfie of us baking cookies with flour all over our faces. You have everything you need, she said gently, placing a hand over mine. You just have to let them see who you really are. Later that evening, after she left, I found Theo sitting cross-legged on the floor in his room, writing something on a piece of lined notebook paper. What are you working on, buddy? I asked, kneeling beside him. He looked up, his eyes serious in a way that didn't belong on a 6-year-old. I'm writing a letter, he said, for the judge. I paused. A letter? He nodded, just in case they don't know how much I want to stay with you. I felt my throat tighten. Theo, that's very sweet, but it's okay, Mommy, he said quickly. I won't say anything mean about Grandma. I just want them to know what it's like to be with you. He folded the paper into quarters and slipped it into his backpack. I'll take it with me just in case. I didn't know what to do with that. Part of me wanted to tell him no, that it wasn't his job to fix this. But the other part, the one that knew how smart and gentle and deeply feeling my son was, just nodded and hugged him tight. The next morning was cold and gray. Theo wore his favorite navy sweater, the one with the little dinosaur patch on the sleeve. I braided his hair back into a little bun like he liked and packed an extra snack just in case. We sat silently in the back of the courtroom waiting. Margot arrived in a designer coat and patent leather heels. Her lawyer walked in with a briefcase that looked more expensive than my entire wardrobe. I tried not to look at them. I focused on Theo's hand in mine. When the judge called us forward, I stood with my lawyer and took a deep breath. Margot's attorney went first. He spoke about financial stability, routine, and the benefits of a 2-parent household, which she could simulate apparently with a live-in nanny and tutors. He implied that my home was a place of chaos and emotional fragility. I kept my face neutral. I thought of Lena's words, let them see who you are. When it was my turn, I spoke calmly. I told the judge about our routines, school, homework, bedtime stories. I showed evidence of Theo's progress, his friendships, his comfort and security. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just told the truth. Then, just as the judge leaned forward to close the hearing, Theo tugged my hand. He stood up, stepped out from the bench, and walked forward slowly. Your Honor, he said, holding that same folded piece of notebook paper. Can I read something I wrote? The judge blinked, surprised. You wrote something, son?
Theo nốt, Dad.
Yes, sir. It's for you. The room went completely silent. Even Margot looked frozen, unsure of what was happening. The judge looked at me, then back at Theo. All right, he said. Go ahead. Theo unfolded the paper, smoothed it on the desk in front of him, and cleared his throat. Theo stood there, small and steady, holding that piece of paper like it was made of glass. His voice didn't shake. My name is Theo Carter, he began. I'm 6 years old. I like dinosaurs, grilled cheese, and playing with my mom. I want to live with my mom. The courtroom didn't move. The judge leaned slightly forward, hands folded under his chin. Theo looked down and kept reading. My mom gives me hugs when I feel bad. She makes pancakes on Sunday and lets me pour the syrup even when I spill it. She laughs when I tell her jokes, even the ones that don't make sense. When I have a nightmare, she lets me sleep in her bed. She calls me her heart. My throat closed. I felt my eyes burn, but I didn't dare blink. I didn't want to miss a second. Theo kept going, his little fingers tightening around the paper. Sometimes we miss my dad and we cry together, but then she tells me stories about him, and we light a candle and we say good things. She says it's okay to be sad and okay to be happy again too. He paused, looked up at the judge. I know Grandma loves me, but she says my mom is too soft. I think soft is good. I don't want to live somewhere that doesn't let me feel things. I want to live with the person who lets me be a kid. He folded the letter carefully and looked around the room. Everyone was still. Even Margot had lowered her eyes. I just thought you should know, he added quietly. Thank you. Then he turned and walked back to me, slid into the seat beside me and took my hand. I wanted to break down, but I couldn't. Not yet. The judge was still watching us. He sat back in his chair, silent for a long time. You could feel the tension crackling through the room like static. He finally spoke. This court acknowledges the statement given by the minor, Mr. Theo Carter. While we typically avoid placing children in the position of testifying, it is clear that his words were his own, and that they reflected deep emotional clarity. I find them compelling. My heart leapt, then froze. Compelling wasn't a ruling. The judge turned to Margot's attorney. I've reviewed the petition and supporting evidence submitted by Mrs. Langston and her legal team. There is no documented abuse, no medical concern, and no professional testimony suggesting that Ms. Carter is unfit. The court does not believe that financial disparity alone constitutes a reason to remove a child from his mother, especially not when the child's emotional well-being appears stable and clearly bonded. Margot opened her mouth to speak, but the judge raised his hand. Furthermore, he continued, the child has expressed a sincere and articulate desire to remain with his mother. That carries significant weight in this decision. He turned to face me, his expression softening. Carter, this court finds that you are fit to retain full legal and physical custody of your son. Visitation arrangements with Mrs. Langston may be discussed through mediation, but the court sees no reason to pursue permanent removal of custody. For a moment I couldn't move. It was like someone had just lifted a 2-ton weight off my chest. My legs felt like jelly, my hands were shaking, but I reached over and pulled Theo into my arms. He clung to me, wrapping his arms around my neck the way he always did when he needed to feel safe. Only this time it was me who needed it. Margot didn't speak as we walked past her. She sat stiffly, her jaw clenched, her hands white-knuckled around the handles of her purse. I didn't gloat. I didn't even look at her. I just kept walking, holding Theo's hand as tight as I could. We stepped outside into the sunlight. It had warmed up just a little. Theo squinted and smiled up at me. Did I do okay, Mommy? I knelt down and kissed his forehead. You saved us. The day after the hearing, the house felt different. Not because anything had physically changed. Theo still woke up early and dragged me into the kitchen to help him make cereal. The furniture was the same. The smell of lavender from the candle we always lit during breakfast was still floating in the air. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I had fought for my son and I had won. That morning I found his letter, the one he read in court, taped to the refrigerator with a dinosaur magnet. He had written his name at the bottom in red crayon and drawn a tiny heart next to it. I stood there for a long time, reading it again line by line until my eyes blurred and I had to sit down. He had written that for me, not because I asked him to, not because he thought it would help me win, but because he saw me. He felt our bond, and in his own little way, he stood up to protect it. We went out to the park that afternoon, just the two of us. I let him stay on the swings way too long and bought him an ice cream, even though dinner was only an hour away. When we got home, he asked if we could call his dad's old number and leave a message like we used to. I held the phone to his ear as he whispered, "Daddy? The judge said I get to stay with Mommy." I was brave just like you. I couldn't hold back the tears that time. I think people underestimate what kids understand. They think being young means being unaware. But Theo knew. He felt the tension. He saw the stress on my face, heard the whispered phone calls, noticed the nights I lingered too long by his bed. He picked up on everything. And still he chose hope. He chose love. We met with a court-appointed mediator a few weeks later to discuss Margot's visitation rights. It was tense but civil. I agreed to supervise visits once a month, not because I wanted her in our lives, but because Theo did love her in his own way. And I didn't want to teach him that love had to come with hate attached. She never apologized, not for the custody suit, not for the lies in court, not for trying to dismantle the life I built, but that no longer had the power to break me. I realized something important through all of this. Being a mother doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean having the biggest house or the best job or always knowing the right answer. It means showing up, even when you're exhausted. It means putting someone else's needs above your pride, your fear, and your pain. It means giving love freely, even when you're not sure it's enough. Because to them it is enough. There was a time when I thought being soft made me weak, that if I cried too much or held Theo too tightly, I'd be proving Margot right. But now I see it differently. Soft doesn't mean weak. Soft means safe. Soft means strong in the matter most. Theo taught me something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up with a sinking feeling, wondering if the court ruling was just a dream. I tiptoe down the hall, quietly peeking into his room, watching him sleep, his small legs tangled in the blankets, his mouth slightly open, one arm holding his stuffed tiger like it's the only thing in the world that matters. And then I exhale. We're okay. More than okay. We're whole. If you're a parent, or if you've ever fought to protect someone you love, you know exactly what this feels like. You know what it's like to feel powerless, and yet to feel the fire of that powerlessness ignite something fierce inside you. You know what it's like to be underestimated, dismissed, and told that you're not enough. But I hope with all my heart, you also know that your love matters. It matters even when it's quiet, even when it's questioned. And if no one has told you today, I want you to know this: you're doing better than you think. If this story has touched you, if it's reminded you of someone you love, or something you've had to fight for, I hope you'll take a moment to like this post. It helps more than you might realize. Share it with someone who needs a little hope today, whether they're in the midst of a custody battle, or simply struggling to keep their family together, one day at a time. And please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Have you ever been told you weren't enough? How did you rise? What did you do? Finally, if you want to hear more true, powerful stories like this, stories about strength, love, and the moments that change everything, subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss what's next. Thank you for being here, for listening, for caring. From one heart to another, take care of yourself and hold tight to your people.